Good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. Let us stand as we prepare to open in prayer. And this morning, our prayer champion, Reverend Kilo, will lead us in prayer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Let's take a moment and close our eyes and just feel the power already present within you. Breathing in here and breathing out now. Breathing in presence and breathing out peace. I ease into this moment with breath, knowing that there is one supply. I call you Mother, Father, God, all-encompassing Spirit, omnipotence, omnipresence, and all knowledge. I am knowing that you fill up this room, you fill up these people, you fill up the TV screens with your wonder, with your awe, with your compassion, with your infinite intelligence, your infinite wisdom, and infinite love. I know that you are here now as us, working through us. We're in this small, but God is in the large. And I am knowing right now our sons and daughters are connected. We are tuned in and turned on. I am knowing the knower in me that knows all. And I release any self-deprecation, any thoughts of thinking what's wrong with me or what's not working with me. And I tune into what I am. And I am whole, I am complete, and I am worthy. And I am knowing that I am fully self-expressed. I am a beautiful expression of the divine. I am loved and I am loving. I am power. I am creativity and I am safe right here. Right here is a safe space to be who you are, to be the love that you seek, to be the prosperity that you seek, to be abundantly expressed as God. I am seen as God sees today. I am open to all of the good words that is about to be spoken. I am open to hear with the ear behind the ear, hearing the songs and their message and taking hold in my body, my mind, and in my heart. I am so thankful to know that the Lords are at work. The Lord is you. The Lord is me. And together, right here, right now, we can celebrate in all the ways that what we desire unfolds. This and more. This and something better. And I am so thankful in advance for the good that is in operation. So let's together celebrate, rejoice, right here and now. Amen. Amen. Ashe. And so it is.
We celebrate being here in the present moment. The past is gone, the future is yet to come, and we are here now. I can feel my feet on the ground. I am in the present moment now. What a joyful place I found. Here in the present moment now. I am here now.
Celebration Spiritual Center, where we celebrate the magnificence of God. This God, whatever you call this God, is moving and having its being in you, right where you sit. It didn't just touch your neighbor on the shoulder. Right where you are is the goodness of God. Right where you are is the power of God. Right where you are is the perfection of God. Right where you are is the truth of God. Now that should make you really excited, because that means that you are as God created you. That also means that you are sinless. Take that in. If you have been told in the past that you were full of sin, that your mistakes were being held against you, well, I'm here to tell you that that's not good information. It's inaccurate. Because God, why would God create something so perfect, whole, and complete, and then keep a list of its mistakes? It doesn't make sense. At CSC, we tell you not to leave your brain at the door, right? Now, an unconditionally loving presence wouldn't keep anything against you, would it? Right. So if you're holding on to a list of your mistakes, drop them now. Let them go. And let this power move through you, because it wants to, and it truly is. At CSC, we also believe that everything is spiritual. And that would include your cell phones. So what I want you to do is spiritualize your cell phone. Okay? And what does that mean, Pastor Yolanda? That means put your cell phone on vibrate. But if something moves you or touches you, put it out there on Facebook and Twitter. Let people know where you are. We are live streaming today from Facebook, but let people know where. Oh, YouTube. YouTube we're live streaming. But let people know where you are in consciousness. All minds are joined, of course, in Miracle says. And that means what touches you has the potential to impact another life. Put it out there. And we also want to keep in touch with you. So, if you receive one of these blue connection cards, please fill it out. And that would include your email address. Drop it in with your offering, and we'll put you on our mailing list. We are in year 6 at CSC, and it keeps getting better and better and better. So you want to make sure you're in the know, okay? And finally, when I look out into this beautiful energy that is being created right now, Pastor Greg and I said we wanted to create a place that felt so good when you walked into it. That even if you thought about it, you would just have a feeling of goodness flow over you. That when you came into this place for the first time, you were never a visitor, you were a guest in our home and in our hearts. And when you come back to this place, you're family. The first time you come, you're a guest. And when you come back, family. So, if we have any first-time guests, briefly stand. First-time guests? And remember, the first time you come to CSC, you're a what? Yes. And when you come back to CSC, you're what? Yes. Right, just stand and greet each other like family.
Because we recognize that when we take these words and we match them with music, they actually sink in and stick in our mind in a much more profound way. And so many years ago, I was on the subway, and I was thinking, about this idea of what would it look like for us to collectively pray and sing together. And then this idea came to me, and it's called the I am prayer. So I'm inviting you first to just think about what are your I am affirmations, right? I am prosperous, I am bold, I am amazing, I am brilliant, I am perfect, whole, and complete. I remain as God created. What are your I ams? You can just yell them out right now. You have an I am affirmation?
I am love.
I am love, yes. Good. Good. All right, we have some I ams, which is good. This is good. So what we're going to do is, there's a moment when we're going to sing I am, and then we're going to yell out our I am affirmations, right? And so we'll demonstrate it for you so you'll get an idea of it, and you'll know when to speak out those affirmations. And so what happens is, as we're speaking that out, because I am followed by anything, it's coming to you, right? So it's a very powerful prayer. So as we affirm our I ams, then we sing all of this and more I am. Whatever it is that we've spoken collectively into the space, we're still more than that. Yes. Because we're one with the all that is. We're one with God. So we're eternal. We're bigger than anything we could ever imagine or conceive of as our I am. This is the I am prayer. Think about your I ams. Make sure you got it right. Here we go. I am. Who are you? Tell me who you are. I am.
what you will learn about CSC is that our mission, vision, and purpose guide everything that we do. The vision. Celebration Spiritual Center is a God experience that turns on the heart, mind, and soul of the world. A God experience is the realization of oneness that transcends material sense. Our mission and purpose is to awaken the world to the presence of God within and all around us. Celebrate this truth as one family. Embody unconditional love. Equip humanity to live our greatest lives and serve all creation. The centering thought for meditation this month is, I rest in the arms of God. And the song is, Rest in the Arms of God. We continue the April message series, The Seed, the Soil, the Tree, the Fruits, Making Sense of Manifestation. The Kabbalion teaches the ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. This principle reminds us that the physical things we interact with, like nature, can teach us about non-physical things like the mental and spiritual worlds. We all know at a certain level of awareness that thoughts become things. We also know that if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. But why does it still seem so difficult to deliberately create and manifest the life that we want? And why does the whole process seem to take so long? This month, as we honor the season of the Earth and celebrate Earth Day, we look to nature's wisdom. She will help us make sense of manifestation and fine-tune our own ability to create on purpose. Pastor Greg's topic today is, do you have a fertile mind? And now it's time for your CSC news and updates. Celebrate the Christ within on Easter Sunday. Invite your friends and family to our Easter Sunday service on April 21st. Doors open at 10:30 a.m. Service begins promptly at 11. Get here early because it will be jam-packed, y'all. Now, parents, don't forget to register your child for next Sunday's Children's Experience. Next Sunday, we'll celebrate CSC's annual Easter egg hunt as well as Earth Day activities. Registration must be completed by the close. I like activities. Registration must be completed by the close of business on Friday. Go to our website at www.celebrationsc.org/CSC Kids and register today. Reminder to new and current members. New members, please complete your membership agreement form and magnificence inventory by April 28th. Current members, please return your annual renewal by April 28th. Transform your life, study with PGMPY. Your next opportunity to receive direct support and knowledge from Pastor Greg and Pastor Yolanda is here. Learn the keys to activating prosperity in every area of your life through the transformative 12-week process known as the 4T Prosperity Program. The cost of the class is $99 for new students and $50 for returning students. For more information, please go to www.celebrationsc.org/register. Class starts on Thursday, April 18th, so sign up today. Come get clarity about what's going on in your life. Pastor Greg and Pastor Yolanda are here to support you in applying what you learn at CSC to your daily life experiences. Join us on Sunday, April 21st at 1 p.m. for the God Talk. No question is off limits. CSC's annual Baby Blessing Celebration will be held on Mother's Day, May 12th at 10 a.m. If your child is 3 years old or younger and you would like to participate in our ceremony, sign up at the member services table or go to celebrationsc.org/baby and complete the form by April 28, 2019. The ceremony is free for all active members. Non-members can also participate at a cost of $150 per child. Now, if you have any questions, please see Pastor Greg or Pastor Yolanda. Start your day by knowing the truth of who and whose you are. PGPY and the prayer champions are here for you, and they pray for us every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Call details can be found at the host table, on our website, and social media. Connect with us this Wednesday and advance confidently into your day. Text to give. It's fast, it's easy, and it's secure. Text your dollar amount to 347-744-9500. Then follow the prompts. Minimum donation is $10. Again, the number is 347-744-9500. Try it out today. Now, just a few short housekeeping reminders. Food and drink is not allowed in the sanctuary, except for water. However, we do ask that you keep your beverage covered. Also, no audio or video recording is permitted during service. And now we just have an announcement from Pastor Yolanda, but before that, thank you, and we will see you on Easter Sunday.
Nina Simone said, freedom is no fear. No fear. Now, how many of us are operating like that in our lives? Walking around here, knowing who we are, standing in it, and never being afraid to move forward in our dreams, in our lives, in our relationships. Anybody? The people that took my class need to be raising their hand. I just wanted to briefly announce that I will be teaching my intro to A Course in Miracles, which I call 50 Days to Fearless Living, beginning on Wednesday the 24th. It's a 12-week in-person class for people that want more details so that we don't have to take up time here in service. I'll be holding a Q&A this coming Wednesday from 7 to 8 o'clock, a Q&A call. Details are going to be online, or already online, right? And if you want to join me for that call, you'll get all the details about the class, 50 Days to Fearless Living. Taking those first 50 lessons of A Course in Miracles and applying them to our lives and advancing confidently, free. All right? Thank you. Well, we've come to the time in our service that we dedicate to going within. That we dedicate to tapping into the truth of our being. That we dedicate to meditation, to contemplation, and to allowing the joyful expression of God to be felt by us. Many people spend time acquiring knowledge, and I'm one of those. But there's more to understanding what God is than just the knowledge that we acquire. God, as I say, is a felt reality. Just knowing the scripture or the passages or the chants is not enough. Because what you have to do is feel God within you to know that it is alive and well. And it is possible to feel it anytime you take that breath, close your eyes, and just settle into this field that we call the unified field. Settle into that. Allow that energy to permeate your body, your mind, your heart. And so we take time every Sunday to do just that, to go within. I like to say, if you can breathe, you can meditate, so everyone is an expert. And this month, we're using the song, The Breath of God is Breathing Me, just to bring our awareness to, when we close our eyes, God is right there. Not out in the sky, not judging, but right where we are. It's breathing me now. It's filling me now. It's loving me now. So go ahead and close your eyes. And bring your feet to the floor. If you're holding anything in your lap, go ahead and release that now. And just notice the breath right where it is. No judgment of the breath, just notice that it is flowing, that you are connected to God by that breath. Each inhale and exhale expands you and fills you with that God presence. With the eyes closed, bring your focus to the feet and just surrender the feet to the floor. It's as if a weight is released and you're supported by the floor beneath you. And that energy now gets to travel up your legs, across your knees, and settle in the seat. We allow the seat to relax. And now we feel and imagine the energy traveling up our spine, crossing each chakra, traveling up, activating, opening. Energy flowing out the crown of our head, tapping into the energy in this room, in this atmosphere, and then descending back through each chakra to ground us even more. From this place, we're going to breathe together, feel God together. Together, expand the low belly, expand on the inhale, and open the mouth and release on the exhale. Inhale, expand the low belly, now up through the rib cage, expand front and sides and back of body. Hold it there, and release. Beautiful. Inhale all the way up through the heart now. Hold it there, center of the chest. Expanding across the shoulders, enlivening the body, and release. One more full breath in, all the way up through the heart. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release. There's a subtle opening, a relaxation that happens when we breathe. Inhaling all the way up again through the heart, and release. One more time. Inhale all the way up through the heart. Close the lips and exhale through the nose. This is our form of breath in and out through the nose for the remainder of our time. This breath has created a vibration and atmosphere. This music supports that vibration. And the energy of each heart comforts and enfolds. From this place of awareness, we're going to sing. You just remember that the breath of God is breathing you, that you're filled with this breath. Let it take you lovingly into its arms, into its embrace. Let this breath fill you now. The breath of God is breathing me right now, right now. The light of God is filling me Scan your body one more time and see if you're holding anywhere. Let it all rest, let it go. We will monitor this time. You just take this inward journey into the arms of God. Let every voice, but this voice that says you are loved, be still now. With your eyes still closed, scan your body and notice, did you have any moments of quiet, allowing, loving, and acceptance? Into those arms lay everything that would prevent you from feeling this God. Leave it there and walk away. See yourself leaving behind the worry, the doubt, and the fear. And an ease comes over you. It's almost as if you hear the angels say, rest now. Rest in the arms of God. Let the past rest. Let the future rest. Rest. Just rest. Take this feeling with Start to bring yourself back. Slowly. Bring your palms to heart center. And lower your chin to your fingertips. Slowly flutter the eyes open. Take a point on the floor in front of you. Inhale. Raise the chin. Raise the gaze. Namaste.
don't know if you all heard about it this week, but the scientific world is rejoicing, particularly astronomers and astrophysicists are in celebration because of a wonderful feat. We now have an official picture of a black hole, right? Which, when you look at the picture and you look at it zoomed in, it doesn't look like much, but one of the reasons that this is very significant is that this black hole is 55 million light years away. And it took 8 telescopes positioned specifically around the Earth to be able to capture this image. It also took a woman to design and lead this initiative. And so it's amazing because no matter how far out we look, we find something. There's no streets of gold 55 million light years away. But what we find is another expression of God. And I encourage you to go online and look at it again. The zoomed in picture doesn't look like much, but if you look at the picture as it's zoomed out, to see what life looks like 55 million light years away, it's pretty beautiful. And everywhere we look, whether we're on this plane, on this planet, or 55 million light years away, we are finding the divine. And so this song is a celebration of that reality, that God is absolutely everything. It's infinity, it's the stars, it's the galaxies, and it's also the very life in us. It's our everything. In you I live and breathe. You're and all I see. You are life in me, my everything.
Your infinity, stars and galaxies.
It's the power that's behind everything we know and see. It says it loves me, and it says I'm worthy. And there is nothing that can change this love inside of me. Oh, where would I be without this love? Where would I be without this joy? You are life in me, my everything. Your infinity, stars and galaxies. You are life in me. Yeah. It's in the mountains and it's in the flowers. It's the power that we use to create the life we see. And it says it loves me. And it says I'm worthy. And there is nothing that can change this love. Oh, nothing exists without love. No, nothing exists without love. And you are life in me, my everything. In you I live and breathe. You are all I see. God, you are life in me. Your infinity, you're the stars and galaxies. You're the life in me. You were everything. Absolutely everything. That which is 55 million light years away, and that which is right in front of our face. It is everything. In you I live and breathe. You're my everything. In you I live and breathe. You're my everything. Psalm 21, can we sing that yet? In you I live and breathe. You're my everything. You're my everything. You're the flowers, the birds, the trees. You're the clouds and you're the seas. You are also me. You're my everything. You're me. Yeah. In you I live and breathe. You're this planet that we're spinning on. You're everything. You're my everything. You're the galaxy that we call home. You're everything. In you I live and breathe. You are that which I see and that which I cannot see. Oh, you're my everything. All the power there is to be. All the power there is to do. All the power there is to have. That is you. Everything. Oh, everything. Every color of the rainbow. You're everything. When I look in your eyes, I'm looking at the divine. I'm looking at the divine. You're mine, you're mine. You're mine, you're mine. God is everything. Everywhere. There's no place where I can be that I do not find divinity. Everything. Everything. There is only one mind. There is only one power. It is that power that we use to create the life that we see. It's the power that's behind and back of and underneath all things. I choose to call it Mother, Father, God, but it does not care what I call it, only that I make use of it. It is our everything. Oh, you I live and breathe. You're my everything. You're my everything. In you I live and breathe. You're my everything. So it is. So it is. Yes. Good morning. Again, Celebration Spiritual Center family. One of the first things that we must do to begin to transform our lives is develop a new God concept. And that's what that song is really all about. Understanding that God is not some being, some man in the sky with a white beard, punishing and judging us and sending us tests. But God is invisible substance. It's everything. It becomes everything. And that which it becomes is based on our thought, our pattern of thought. The molds that we create in our mind, it fills. It's everything. It's everywhere. It's constantly encountered. Well, I have some things to share this morning, and I pray that it's beneficial. We started last week with the currency of life. And we talked about this idea looking at the first stage of manifestation, the seed stage. And I said that for us on the mental level, the seeds of our life are our ideas and our choices. And the last thing I said in the sermon last week was that the interesting thing about the way the seed works is as much as the seed has so much power and potential and capability, and yet the seed has to surrender to the soil and to the sun. And so that takes us into the next stage. But one other thing that I said there that's important, and I'll probably come back to this each week, as we're looking at this series, the seed, the soil, the tree, the fruit, making sense of manifestation, we're doing a couple things with this series. First, It enables us, as we look at each stage, to identify which stage we're currently in, related to a desired manifestation. This will also enable us to learn how to maximize and appreciate the good in every stage. And it will support us in experimenting with the process of manifestation to examine our results and then tweak or modify as needed. So the soil stage, what I thought about is something that when I was a kid, I had my grandparents, my maternal grandparents were in Maryland, my paternal grandparents were in New Jersey. And so my sister and I split our time between the grandparents in the summer. And my maternal grandparents, my mom's mom, my grandmother, she was a gardener. Of course, they grew up in the South and grew up on the farm and had all of that skill and knowledge. But she also maintained a garden up until really the last years of her life. She maintained gardens at home, but then she also was a part of a community garden. And so that meant that every summer we had, tomatoes and cucumbers and zucchinis and all kind of wonderful things, right? And I'm grateful that I got the appreciation of what fresh food tastes like and having access to fresh produce, right? Beautiful. So being inspired by my grandmother as a little 6-year-old boy in the summer, and one of my favorite fruits are oranges. I love citrus fruits in general, but I had an orange, and I'm like, well, supposedly the way this thing works is you could take a seed, put it in the ground, and I'm gonna have my oranges just like grandma has her tomatoes, right? So in my grandparents' backyard, there was a swing set. And at the end of the sliding board, because we used it so much, the grass wasn't growing there anymore. It was just like dirt from us constantly landing there. So I was like, this is the perfect spot. It's open. There's no grass there. So I'm going to take my little orange seeds, and I'm going to dig up the ground and plant my orange seeds. And, I'm going to have oranges, right? So, I told my grandmother about it, and she chuckled, and she thought it was cute. And every day I kept, checking, to see, not digging up, but checking, making sure that it was coming. I was happy on the days that it rained because I was like, that this rain is helping my little orange seed. Well, needless to say, there has yet to be an orange tree at that spot at my grandparents' house, right? And when I think about that story, it's interesting because it tells us so much, because many times as we are creating mentally, we have the seeds, right? We have the ideas, we have the choices, but we actually don't have the right soil or the right conditions in order for that thing to emerge. It's not that that orange seed didn't have the capability and potential to become an orange tree, sprout orange blossoms, and then eventually oranges, but at the end of the sliding board in Silver Spring, Maryland, it wasn't gonna happen. It didn't have the right conditions, right? And so, as we're looking at nature, and we're looking at how nature can teach us, I want to take us back, as you already heard it in the series description, that we're anchoring this on the principle of correspondence. And the principle of correspondence says, as above, so below. As below, so above. Now, this is not a metaphor, right? When we're using nature, we're not saying, oh, it's sort of like this. That's not what we're saying. What the principle of correspondence teaches us is that at every level of existence, the true principles are always true at every layer. So if it's true, as we look at the seed, the soil, the tree, the fruit, and we can understand that process, then it must happen and work the same way on the mental and spiritual plane. So we're not just saying that, oh, this is just a nice way to understand it. We're saying that this is how it is. That's what the principle of correspondence teaches us. There's a direct correspondence, a direct correlation. And so as we think about that and think about the soil, I want to talk a little bit about soil and the health of soil and the quality of soil and what fertile soil looks like, because as we understand that, then that'll help us as we're thinking about a fertile mind. So the definition of soil health or fertile soil, we read this: the capacity of a soil to function within ecosystems and land use applications that can sustain productivity, maintain environmental quality, and promote plant and animal health, okay? Healthy soil, fertile soil, sustains productivity, maintains environmental quality, and it promotes plant and animal health. Now we go a little further. If we want to look at the characteristics of healthy soil or fertile soil, we read this. First, it has good soil tilth. It's a nice word. I've learned about tilth. It's a wonderful word. And what tilth is all about is the soil actually being suitable for seeds to be sown into. That's what tilth is. It's interesting. Soil actually has to be suitable. It has to have good tilth for seeds to even be sown into it. It also has to have sufficient depth, because we recognize that there are some plants and some trees that grow massive root systems deep and wide. And if the soil doesn't have the right depth, it actually can't handle the seed that is being sown into it. That's already preaching by itself. Lord have mercy. Right? Now, healthy soil also has proper levels of nutrients. It also has good drainage. This is interesting because, you can overwater a plant, right? And what happens if it doesn't have good drainage, you drown the roots. The very thing that enables the tree or the fruit or that plant to actually grow and sustain and continue to sustain its life, it can be drowned if the soil doesn't have good drainage. Also, healthy soil has large populations of beneficial organisms. It has a resistance to weeds and degradation. And finally, it is resilient when unfavorable conditions occur. I could just sit down right now. But now let's look at, because it's important, so we're talking about what healthy and fertile soil is, then we also should look at what does poor quality soil look like, right? So poor quality soils are the result of soil compaction. So when soil is compacted too much, then that's when it doesn't have the tilth that's required. It's actually not suitable for sowing seeds, and then it also doesn't have the sufficient depth. Surface crusting is the same thing. This is what leads us into the poor drainage problems that drowns the root systems. If it has low organic matter or minerals, it is poor soil. And then if there's increased pressure from diseases, weeds, and insects, and finally, if there's a lack of beneficial organisms, then we have what's called poor soil. So as we hear this, we hear what healthy or fertile soil is, and we hear what poor or unhealthy soil is. Just turn to your neighbor and ask, do you have a fertile mind? Do you have a fertile mind? Because we recognize that it's our mind that is the soil. Now, last week we talked about this. This is the other anchoring principle that we have to look at, is the principle of gender in the Kabbalion. Kabbalion says gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. No creation, physical, mental, or spiritual, is possible without this principle. So on the physical level, the seed and the soil, the seed is the masculine, as we talked about last week, and the soil is the feminine, which we're talking about this week. Now, the Kabbalion goes on to talk about this feminine principle, as we understand that that's what the soil is. The Kabbalion says that the feminine principle is the one always doing the active, creative work, and this is so on all planes. And yet, each principle is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. So what's interesting about this, as even last week as we talked about the seed, I touched on the soil a little bit, but I was trying not to get too deep into it. But as we continue to move forward, it's actually impossible to really completely talk about the seed without also talking about the soil. In the same way, it's actually impossible for me to completely talk about the soil without talking about the seed. Why? Because each principle is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. Now, I just want to say this one little thing as it relates to our lives now, and we think about the dance of the masculine and the feminine, right? Because as we are seeing and witnessing, and it's beautiful that the rise of the feminine and the rise of the divine feminine, if we simply replace toxic masculinity with divine femininity, we've still lost. Each is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. So where we are striving, what we are moving towards is healthy masculinity and healthy femininity, working together to create a healthy world, right? That's what we're after. And so when we understand this feminine principle at the level of mind, the feminine principle of mind corresponds to, we can call it deeper mind, we can call it the subjective mind, the subconscious mind, the involuntary mind, the passive mind. And so the tendency of the feminine principle, the Kabbalion says, is always in the direction of receiving impressions. The soil receives seed. And here's what's interesting. Now, provided they're the right conditions, because, I put my orange seed in the soil and was like, yeah, you can plant it if you want. I can't do anything with it, right? But with the right conditions, that soil is going to bring forth that fruit easily and effortlessly, right? It doesn't judge, well, I don't know if I really want to have oranges where I am. Like, that's not what the soil does. The soil is not, well, apples, really? That's what you want? Really? The soil never does that. Vegetables? Right? It doesn't do any of that. It simply takes the seed and it allows the information that is in the seed. And again, as it said, as the Kabbalion says so wonderfully, that the feminine principle is the one always doing the active creative work, and this is so on all planes. That's what it does. It goes to work. It begins to do the active creative work. Now we go a little further and we understand that one of the ways for us to understand this seed and soil representation, the Kabbalion is very brilliant here. It talks about the I as the masculine and the me as the feminine. And we read this: there is this dual aspect in the mind of every person. The I represents the masculine principle of mental gender, and the me represents the feminine principle. The I represents the aspect of being, and the me represents the aspect of becoming. And so there's always this potential within us to become something more. Now, the me, when we think about ourselves, right, what we describe as me are usually our habits, our emotions, our career, you know, those things that make up who we are. But if we think about it, our me is changeable. Who you described as me when you were 5, and who you described yourself as me when you were 13, and who you described yourself as me when you were 21 are all different people, technically, right? Because the me is changeable. And this is interesting when we think about the feminine in general and why it's so important. Pastor Yolanda and I, we love the relationship work of Allison Armstrong. And one of the things that Allison talks about in her work is this idea that the feminine instinct is highly adaptable. And one of the things that I found that's interesting, that you hear it sometimes, but you rarely hear this from men, but I hear it all the time from women. This idea of losing yourself in a relationship. And what this points to, again, as we understand that this correspondence, this principle is happening everywhere, it's this understanding that the soil becomes whatever is present based on whatever the I is, right? Now, as each of us contain these principles, each of us are operating in this way, and we're going to go a layer deeper with this. And so if there is no I that is affirmative, if there is no I that's constructive, and if you are not in control of your I, the seed, the choice, the idea, then the soil, that is you, is going to inevitably take whatever seeds are coming from the external and give birth to it easily and effortlessly. And one of the things I began to think about, it's interesting as we look at movements on this planet and a massive change that has happened on this planet. One of the reasons why change doesn't always happen in the way that we would desire it, it is because the world, the masses, are living in me consciousness. They're living in this receptive consciousness, and so whatever Facebook says, I guess that's what it is. Whatever this news reporter says, I guess that's what it is. Whatever this person who I've given, put up above me or higher than me says, then that's what it is. And so we're in this me consciousness, and then that's what we create from. But at every time that there's been massive change, and when we look at the movements that are happening across this planet, it was the point at which the people, the masses, took control of their I again and said, no, wait. I am a man. I am a man. No, I am worthy. No, I am a full human being. No, I am capable of doing this thing. No, I am capable of having this thing. No, I am worthy. At every point, you can look at any social movement on this planet across time. They finally took control of their I and spoke to the me within them and gave birth to a new experience. It was never that the so-called power changed, right? Power conceded to the power of the masses. But as long as the masses lived in that me consciousness, there was nothing to concede to. So again, we have this idea of understanding what's going on with the feminine and what's going on with the masculine and what's going on with the soil. So let's go back and look at these characteristics. As we talked about the characteristics of healthy soil, let's look at what the characteristics of a fertile mind is. Soil tilth. Love that word. So if we think about tilth on the mental plane, that would mean that then we would need to be receptive to new ideas. We would need to be receptive to new choices. We would need to be receptive to new ways of seeing and new ways of being. One of the things that I'm seeing right now, which is interesting as we look at the Green New Deal, for instance. What's happening right now is the soil tilth in mass consciousness ain't really good right now. It's not really good right now. And so we have many of our leaders and our veteran politicians, they can't really see how any other way is possible. We have our dear sister Dianne Feinstein, God bless her. She's done so many things in this country. But she's speaking down to the young people like, no, you don't really understand how this works. No, it doesn't work that way. Meanwhile, we are in a critical point in history where it's time to develop some good soil tilth so that we can be receptive to these new ideas, new choices, ways of seeing, and ways of being. Sufficient depth. I like this one. Sufficient depth. Does the seed, does the idea, does the choice have a place to rest and transform? And what's interesting about this, and so many of these are interrelated, but when we think about the sufficient depth, when we PY and I were just talking about this yesterday. We were talking about Facebook. And we were talking about fake news and you know, so many of these posts, you know, they're bait posts, right? There'll be a headline that's just designed to just make you like it right away or share it. And most people never read the contents of what's actually going on, right? This is how Russia duped all of us with the previous election. But what I recognize is that sufficient depth, if we are crowding our life and our mind with a whole bunch of stuff, right? That has nothing to do with the life you're seeking to create, that is not constructive, that is not affirmative, that is not the voice of love, that is not any of those, like we crowd ourselves with it. This is the only reason why we do the, you know, media fast in some of our classes. Because we recognize that you come to the class, you come to 4Ts, you come into that class 12 weeks, I want to change consciousness, prosperity consciousness. Well, we got to develop some sufficient depth. And so if you're ingesting all of these eyes from out here, all of these ideas from out here, instead of allowing the idea within you, the God in you, to speak to the me within you, you're not actually going to have the results that you desire. So we recognize that for a few weeks, if you can just fast from media, if you can just detox from some of these things, it's actually going to put you in the place of having a fertile mind and actually being able to have and experience results. The next characteristic of a fertile mind is proper levels of nutrients. And when I hear that, what I think about is first self-care. Right? How do we right? What does a nutritious mind look like? Right? What does nutritious thinking look like? And one of the important things, and you know, we've talked about self-care, and there's a few sermons ago we were talking about that in the Practical Spirituality series. But this is also where meditation is so incredibly important. Right? Whatever form of meditation you use, it's incredibly important because what it is doing is literally revitalizing you. And as you contact that level of being, the unified field, you are healing yourself. This is why studies continue to show that meditation can lower cholesterol. Meditation can lower your blood pressure. People get off their medication. That meditation leads to awesome heart health. All of these things begin to happen. And then what also happens, as the studies are showing, you get smarter. What also happens, as studies are showing, you actually start to reverse your age. With proper levels of nutrients, you can do that. But again, as we go back to this sufficient depth thing, right? But if you're filling your mind and filling your consciousness with things that are not beneficial, then that's not nutritious, right? It's like eating sugar cereal every day, right? I mean, it's food, right? But that's not really going to work out in the long term. Good drainage. Now, as we talked about with the soil in the physical world, good drainage is important because without that, we can drown the roots. Good drainage means that a fertile mind forgives, a fertile mind surrenders, a fertile mind knows how to let go, a fertile mind releases what does not serve it. All right. That's what good drainage looks like for a fertile mind, right? And what I was thinking about here is Abraham Hicks always talks about caring how you feel, right? That you understand that the vibration that you're holding, right? If you're holding a vibration of anger, resentment, jealousy, hate, whatever it may be, or just disgust or annoyance, right? That vibration will attract things that match it, and you will continue to create from it. So when you care about how you feel, it's like, whoa, I gotta let this annoyance drain. I gotta let this out. I'm not drowning my roots. Right, when you understand what roots are, and I invite you, if you haven't seen it, we at the POT conference this past summer, we shared the video on Facebook. My talk was all about roots, when the roots are deep. When I talked about, you know, some of the metaphors of roots, and bamboo is a wonderful metaphor of roots. But when we understand what our roots are and what's necessary, and even this even goes back to the meditation and the self-care, because I love how Maharishi Mahesh Yogi talks about this in TM, that one of the mantras or mottos is water the root, enjoy the fruit, right? And when we think about the process of meditation, now if you had a plant or a tree that you saw was dying, you saw that the leaves were turning brown, would you pour water on the leaves? No. I mean, on one level that kind of seems to make sense, like this brown leaf, I want it to change, so let me do something to the leaf. But actually, that's not how the leaf will become nourished. That's not how the leaf will move from death to life. You have to water its roots. And the root system then nourishes, it has knowledge and changes that water and the sun and the nutrients of the soil into food, into energy, into life, and can turn that brown leaf green. Yes, yes? So it is the same truth with us, right? That when we understand the power of our roots, one, this is why we meditate, but also we understand that then we got to have good drainage for our roots. Because if we don't have good drainage for our roots, and we're holding on to unforgiveness, and we're holding on to hate, and we're holding on to an old story, and we're holding on to the shoulds, and all of that stuff, we are starting to choke our roots, the very thing that will nourish the external you, which are the leaves. The next characteristic of a fertile mind. A fertile mind has large populations of beneficial and constructive thoughts, affirmations, and mental programs installed in the subconscious. So this is why we affirm and use affirmations daily. Again, in the 4T's Prosperity Program, one of your assignments from day one is to affirm, I am prosperous 100 times in the morning, and I am prosperous 100 times in the evening. And what is that doing? It's doing this very thing, and this is why, again, all of these steps are about creating and developing and maintaining a fertile mind. So if we have large populations of beneficial and constructive thoughts in our mind, if we have a large population of beneficial and constructive affirmations and beneficial and constructive mental programs, and this is what's interesting when we think about mental programs, what that simply means is that it's an automatic way of being. You just do it and you don't even think about it. And that's the point that we want to get to, that even when somebody, say you set an appointment with somebody and they don't show up, your immediate mental program says, oh, something must have happened. I hope they're all right. But you might remember the time when your mental program was, they don't respect me. They don't respect my time. They couldn't even call. They just texted me, right? That's a mental program too. But when we start to install beneficial and constructive and loving mental programs, then all of a sudden that automatic thought, it just moves us to a point, oh, well, I hope they're all right. I hope everything's okay. Or oh, all is well. You know, we'll get together. It's all good, right? That's what starts to happen when we have those mental programs. It becomes, again, our automatic response. Just in the same way that you don't think about tying your shoe. You just, before you think about it, you're doing it. But that wasn't always the case. That was a mental program that was installed in your mind as a child and learning how to tie your shoes. It's the same thing with this new thought stuff. And so when we have the large populations of beneficial and constructive thoughts, affirmations, and mental programs installed, then our fertile mind has developed a resistance to thoughts of lack, resistance to thoughts of limitation, resistance to thoughts of worry, doubt, unworthiness, and fear. Any thought that is destructive, we've developed a resistance to it. We've developed almost like a force field. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes, that word resistance can be problematic because, we're taught to resist in the political sense or in the revolutionary sense. And instead of it being an act, what we do is we develop that resistance that is automatic. It just happens, right? So I have like 10 thoughts all at once. So what I'm hearing in my mind right now is, growing up in the church, we would hear the old folks, they would pray and they would say, we thank you, Lord, for danger seen and unseen, for protecting us from danger seen and unseen. This is what that resistance develops in us. What begins to happen as you are living in this beneficial, loving, and constructive place, there are things that simply cannot come into your realm of experience. By law, that's the law of attraction. Whatever it is that you're thinking about, you're going to attract the things that match that, which means that automatically the things that don't match that stay away from you. So this is why you don't have to resist it in the sense of fighting against it. What you simply do is develop the beneficial and the constructive, and then you automatically have a resistance to those thoughts, to the lack, to the limitation, to the worry, to the doubt. You're immunized by your very own mind. It reminds me, Willis Kinnear in the 30-Day Mental Diet, it's one of my favorite quotes. He says, I stand guard at the gateway of my mind and entertain only ideas which I desire to have become tangibly manifested. That's how we live. I stand guard at the gateway of my mind. That's that resistance to thought, lack, limitation, worry, doubt, unworthiness, and fear. And so then we have this last one, which is so incredibly important. The characteristics of a fertile mind is resilient when unfavorable conditions occur. This is called unconditional living. If you haven't watched that sermon series, I invite you to go see it, and you should actually start with PY's message, The In-Between. Unconditional living. We will never, in this spiritual center, teach you another version of pie-in-the-sky spirituality that says that, oh, if you affirm and all these things, you're just Teflon and nothing's going to happen to you. Nothing bad will ever occur. We will never teach that. Because we understand the ebbs and flows of life. There will be a time that you will be sad. You will experience the transition of a loved one, the end of a relationship, a job transition. There will be a time where you will be angry. That's true. Anger is wonderful. It's informative. We don't act from anger, but anger is beautiful. It's an emotion just like happiness, right? We recognize that as beings on this planet and on this plane of existence, we will experience unfavorable conditions. But what we teach here, as we understand, and we're talking about unconditional living, we teach how to hold the line and how to keep your mind right in the midst of the unfavorable conditions. And the soil shows us that. The soil is subject to drought. The soil is subject to floods. Two different experiences. The soil is subject to drought. The soil is subject to floods. It's subject to pests and weeds. The soil can have a less productive yield one year, less crops one year versus another. We experience the same thing. We as humans are subject to drought. We're subject to floods. We're subject to pests. And we can have a less productive year or a smaller crop. But healthy soil develops a resilience even under unfavorable conditions. And so it's important that as we have a fertile mind, that fertile mind allows us to hold the line. It allows us to stand tall even in the midst of this. Why? Because we know and we affirm nothing but good can come from this. And so here's my last point. Because as I was thinking about the soil and looking at the qualities and characteristics of healthy soil and soil tilth and all these wonderful things, one of the things that I was thinking about was crop rotation. Y'all know about crop rotation? Yeah. Right? So crop rotation is interesting, and there's kind of a couple different reasons for it. And I'll just read this to you because it's easier than me trying to explain it. The land itself can become tired and less fertile, right? This is because the same type of crop planted repeatedly in the same area keeps draining the land of the same nutrients needed for that plant's growth. Second, certain pests can reach levels that are hard to control when they learn to make a home near a field that always has the same type of crop. Again, that preaches by itself. See, we get used, well, one of the things I say sometimes in a webinar I did earlier this year, you can get used to anything. And so what starts to happen is we can develop a condition that maybe was good 5 years ago, but now, it's just something we've gotten used to and we're just going by rote. And so what begins to happen is certain pests can reach levels that are hard to control because they learn to make a home near a field that always has the same type of crop. Finally, land can become more susceptible to the forces of erosion if the same type of crop is planted repeatedly season after season. And of course, that takes us back to then we would develop unhealthy soil. So it goes on, it says, crop rotation helps mitigate each of these effects. Different types of plants require different types of nutrients from the soil. So by changing crops routinely, it allows the land to remain fertile, since not all of the same nutrients are being used each season. For example, planting a legume such as soybeans helps to replenish necessary nitrogen in the soil, right? That particular legume, soybeans, doesn't need nitrogen, so then the nitrogen is replenished. So then when you plant another plant the next year that actually needs nitrogen, it's going to have enough. And so as I was contemplating this, crop rotation, what is the wisdom from the soil? What is the wisdom of the soil in crop rotation? And what I began to hear is this. So often, and particularly if you're in classes, or you're working through something, you may be doing forgiveness work. We believe in forgiveness work here at CSC. We believe in our worksheets, right? Radical forgiveness and radical self-forgiveness, Colin Tipping. And what I want you to understand is that when you're doing that forgiveness work, you may be doing it around a previous relationship. You and your former partner, spouse, lover broke up, things weren't good, things didn't end well, and you may hold some resentment, or you may not have shown up as your best self in that relationship, and so you're holding some self-guilt and unforgiveness towards self. And so you're doing that work. And what I want you to understand is that that work, as you're working on this thing around your relationship, your romantic relationship, it's more beneficial than you think. Now, yes, it's true. It may bring a new love into your life, but what it is also doing is cultivating the nutrients of healing, forgiveness, clarity, worthiness, fearlessness, and power that will support you in the other crops that you're seeking to grow. See, many times we get so hung up, you're like, Pastor Yolanda, do I really have to keep dealing with this relationship stuff? Pastor Yolanda, Pastor Greg, do I still have to keep forgiving my ex, old ex? Do I have to keep going way back? Pastor Greg, Pastor Yolanda, do I have to keep working on forgiveness stuff related to my family or related to my parents? Yes, but why? Because I know you want the money. I know you want that business to thrive. I know you want that trip. I know you want that car. I know you want that house. But as you do the forgiveness work around this crop, what begins to happen is you are developing the nutrients. You're developing the healing. You're developing the worthiness. You're developing the fearlessness that is needed for the house, that is needed for the car, that is needed for the new relationship, that is needed for the healed family relationship, that is needed for you to walk fearlessly on this earth. And so the wisdom is right here in the soil, whatever it is. So know that as you're doing this work, and this is why it's important to focus on one thing. One thing, y'all. I know it's tempting. I know we have a lot of stuff that we want. But if you understand from this perspective that if you're focusing on one thing and doing your work around this one thing, what you're doing in your soil is developing the nutrients that make the next thing so much easier, and it begins to automatically show up. You work on your relationship and all of a sudden your money gets better. You work on your relationship with self and all of a sudden job opportunities start coming. You work on your relationship with self and all of a sudden you get more dates than you ever had before. That's why. That's why. And so once you've worked that thing and worked it and you're living magnificently, the only thing you need to do to maintain that crop is stay in gratitude around it. You maintain that vibration of gratitude, and now you go to another area of your mind and start planting new seeds, planting new ideas, planting new choices, and going through the same work. With that, I invite everybody to stand. Mother, Father, God, we are so grateful. We are so thankful for this wisdom. The wisdom of the seed that is surrendered to the soil, and the wisdom, power, possibility, and capability of this soil. We are so grateful for this divine feminine that lives in us. This awesome creative ability and faculty that gives birth to all things, that gives birth to anything. And we are so grateful and thankful for the wisdom of a fertile mind, understanding these characteristics, understanding what is required for a fertile mind. And we are so grateful and thankful for the tools that we possess that allow us to maintain good soil tilth, maintain a mind that is receptive, maintain a mind that is open. We forgive ourselves and we set ourselves free for those moments in our lives where we were fixed and hardened, crusty ground. We are so grateful and thankful for the water that you are, that softens us again and allows us to be receptive and to develop the depth that is required for these deep roots, because we recognize that the roots that are your roots, God, they run deep, they run wide, they run deep, they run wide. And so as we are open and receptive and softened to receive the seed that you are, Mother, Father, God, the idea, the choice, that knowing within us that says that we are perfect, whole, and complete, that knowing within us that says we can be, do, or have whatever we want, that knowing within us that says we are perfect, whole, and complete, that knowing within us that says we are worthy and will always be worthy, that knowing within us that says whom shall I fear, that knowing within us, we open our hearts and our minds and we receive it. And as we receive it, we do our work to make sure that this soil receives and maintains the nutrients that are required. As we receive it, we do our work to maintain resistance to that which does not serve us. We do our work to maintain that fearlessness, and we run to forgiveness, and we run to dropping the story. And we maintain that resilience, knowing that nothing but good can come from this. When the weeds show up, we don't lose our minds. When the rabbits show up and the other critters show up, we don't freak out. We affirm that nothing but good can come from this, and we affirm that all is absolutely well in truth. And so with joy and thanksgiving, I now release this prayer. Grateful to be here with these fertile minds. Grateful to be here in a time and place in time of fertile minds, as we are opening ourselves up to new ideas, to transform, to maintain, to sustain, and to heal our planet. For this truth, I'm so very grateful. I release this prayer right here and right now, and together we say, Amen, Amen. Ashe. And so it is. So it is. Thank you.
Have a seat, everybody. Have a seat. So grateful to be in an environment of fertile minds. Thank you for this message, Pastor Ray. This was a good one. Not that they all ain't good. This one just hit home today. I can feel it in the room, right? I have to say, I have to thank my great-grandmother for every summer on the farm. I never knew that all that information would come back to use. Every summer from the age of I can't remember till I wanted to not be able to go.